dedicated to empowering you with information,
to make positive choices,
and be advocates for your overall well-being.
Welcome to The Health View. Welcome to The Health View. I'm Yvonne Dunetz, and today we're going to be talking about the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter. My guest is the Executive Director, Michael Rohnke. Welcome.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Tell us about the history of the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter.
Well, we were started back in 1981 with concerned citizens of Nashua who said, you know what, there should be no reason why people in Nashua don't have enough to eat. And they started the Nashua Soup Kitchen. Again, that was in 1981. And a couple of years later, there was a different group of people, 1984, who said, you know, there's no reason why people in Nashua shouldn't have a warm place to sleep. There's no reason why people in Nashua should potentially freeze to death. And so they started the Nashua Shelter, again back in 1984. They purchased their first building, the first shelter, over on Ash Street, very close to where the PALS program is today, in 1986. And they purchased a second shelter over on Kinsley Street in 1992, I believe. And in 1989, the two organizations, the Soup Kitchen and the Shelter, said, we think we have a lot in common. Maybe we should come together, pool resources. You know, you can do more together than you can separately. And again, in 1989, they came together and formed the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter. And Lisa Christie was the first executive director at that time, 1989, and she served for the next 27 years.
Amazing.
It is incredible.
And how many people do you serve?
Well, it's different measures of who we serve. So today we have a food pantry, and the food pantry is open Monday through Friday, 11 to 2:45 in the afternoon. We have a community kitchen or a soup kitchen where we serve breakfast Monday through Friday, 7 to 8. And we also serve dinner. We serve dinner 7 days a week. Monday through Saturday, we serve dinner 4:30 to 6. And then on Sunday, we serve dinner from noon to 1:30.
And where is that located?
And all the food programs are located at 2 Quincy Street, which is basically sort of just behind the post office. Our director of food service there is Shane Sullivan, a longtime chef, a member of the Navy, and at one point said, you know what, I want to take the skills I have making delicious food and use it to make a difference in the world. And so he runs all of our food programs. And the food programs, the kitchen for breakfast will serve between 50 and 70 people in the morning for breakfast. The dinner will serve between 125 to 200 people for dinner in the evening. And over 6,000 families will come in to use the pantry over the course of the year.
That's remarkable.
It is. One of the things that people don't realize, people tend to think about poverty as something that's sort of like it's a statistic that's always there. So you might have blue eyes, I might have brown eyes. Our eye color isn't going to change. There's always going to be one person in the room with blue and one person with brown. Poverty is a little different. Let's just take a family where maybe you have the mom or dad working construction. Maybe they're pouring concrete. Well, if it's in April or May or August, you can pour concrete. But if it's in December, January, and February, it's much harder to pour concrete. Maybe you can't work at all. That family, most of the year, is doing quite fine, but in the winter months is experiencing poverty. And so when I say that we have 6,000 people coming through our doors, it's not that they come through every single month. Some come through the doors for the pantry just once. Some are here on a regular basis. Some come when they lose a job and they're saying, I need something to get by. We had a government shutdown, and people sometimes are laid off from their work with the federal government. They may need to come in during the federal shutdown, but then they won't need to come in again later.
And how do they avail themselves of your services? Do they just show up, or do they need to be referred? What
Absolutely.
do they do?
Well, the only question we ask in our kitchen, when people come in for breakfast or dinner, the only question we ask is, are you hungry? And if you say you are, we give you food. In fact, occasionally people will come in during the middle of the day or as we're closing up and the doors are locked and they say, I'm hungry. You say, okay, you're not going to get a full dinner, but here's a sandwich, here's some fruit, take it. And when you come back tomorrow, try to make sure you come back between 4:30 and 6.
That's wonderful.
When people are coming in for the pantry, we ask a little bit more information. We ask their name, we ask their address, we ask how many people are in their family, because a single person in a family or maybe two people in a family, they need less food than a family of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. We prioritize people living in the greater Nashua area. So if you're living in Nashua, you can come into the food pantry. But also if you're living in Hudson or in Milford or in Wilton or in Litchfield, you can also come into the pantry.
So they can just show up.
And they can just show up. Again, we do ask somebody's name and we ask their address. And so
that you can verify that they're there and that they in fact live there. And
we ask that because we're asking, we need to keep some kind of statistics about where are people coming from to use the pantry. But if you had this guy, Michael, coming in to the pantry and you saw me come in on Monday, and then again you saw me come in on Wednesday, we might ask for a little bit more information. We say, I thought I saw you on Monday. And I say, okay, well, here's my ID, here's some other information to verify that, it really was me and I'm a different person than whoever you saw on Monday.
What's the mission of the shelter and the soup kitchen?
It's really very basic, and at the same time, it's very broad. So in the very basic is we believe that there is no reason why anyone in Nashua should freeze to death. And so we believe that everybody should be able to access a safe, warm place to stay. We believe that in a nation that is the wealthiest nation in the world, there's no reason why people have to go to bed hungry. Believe it or not, we throw away 35% of all the food that's made in the country. There's so many resources out there. There's no reason why they can't go to people who are hungry and make sure they have enough to eat. So we believe that everyone should have a safe, warm place to stay. We believe that everyone should have enough to eat. And then that's pretty simple. That's pretty basic. Where it becomes much broader is I think, and this is sort of unspoken, but I think we believe in radical generosity. We believe that a caring community, a caring state, a caring nation is one where people say, if there are people in our midst who don't have enough to eat, we're going to do something about that. And every time we call and put something out on the web saying, we need X, Y, and Z. We need gifts for kids who are not going to have them for Christmas. We need backpacks for kids who are going back to school. We ran out of peanut butter. Could somebody? It always comes in. It's really kind of amazing.
And you help people also in helping them find jobs, correct?
We do. That's really more around our sheltering program. I haven't talked about that yet.
Tell us about the
So
shelter.
with the shelter, so we have 2 facilities right now. One is on Ash Street, the other is on Kinsley. And in those 2 facilities, we have 14 permanent beds for single men who are experiencing homelessness. We have 5 permanent beds for women who are experiencing homelessness who are on their own. And we have 5 units of housing for families experiencing homelessness. And in the wintertime, we will pull out some more cots, and we can pull out anywhere from 4 to 6 additional cots for single men and an additional 2 to 4 cots for single women. There are 2 other organizations in town that provide shelter to single men. We are the only organization in town that has dedicated beds for single women experiencing homelessness. And we are the only organization in town that provides emergency shelter for families. So there are other organizations that will provide transitional housing. There are other organizations in town that will do permanent housing. We are the only organization providing emergency shelter for families who need a place to go tonight.
And then what happens after? Do you help them find permanent housing?
We do. One of the challenges with families is that it's very expensive to rent an apartment in Nashua. If you look at what the average rent is in Nashua, it's right around $1,450 a month. And one of the ways that people will move out of the shelter if they're single adults is that, Yvonne, if you were staying in the shelter and I were staying in the shelter and we happened to meet, we said, okay, well, we could rent a one-bedroom apartment
Sure.
for $1,200 a month. You'd stay in the bedroom, I'd stay in the living room, we'd split the rent, and now our rent is only $600 a month. But if you are a mom with 2 kids, well, hopefully you're going to rent a 2-bedroom apartment, so the cost of the bedroom goes up, and you only have your income to pay for it. So suddenly the cost of the rent is at least twice as much as if you're a single person living on her or his own.
Do you collaborate with other organizations within the city?
Of course. I don't believe you could exist in Nashua if you didn't collaborate. We collaborate with the other housing providers. So you might have Front Door Agency or Marguerite's Place or Family Promise or Mary's Place or Harbor Homes or the Nashua Housing Authority. They all are providing housing. But we also collaborate with the Adult Learning Center. So many of our folks coming in, we used to call it a GED.
Yes.
Now we call it a HiSET.
Yes.
So if somebody needs their high school equivalency test, we would send them to the Adult Learning Center. Maybe somebody is coming in with a substance use disorder, a SUD.
Yeah.
We might send them to Resilience. We might send them to Harbor Homes. Maybe somebody is coming in and they are living with a mental health issue. We might send them to Greater Nashua Mental Health Agency. So we partner with all of those different organizations, and we partner not just with service providers, we also partner with community groups. So that might be the Lions Club, the Knights of Columbus, the Rotary. We estimate that we have over 1,000 different volunteers, unduplicated, coming in. Sometimes it's one of those service groups like that. Sometimes it's a church group. Sometimes it's a local business, whether it's Fidelity or Citronics or the United Way will have a group coming in. Maybe it's UPS, and they may come in to serve a meal. They may come in to clean. They may come in to paint a room. Everybody, we've yet to find a person to come in where we haven't found a way for them to help.
So how can people participate and volunteer for your organization and help?
It might even be on the bottom of the screen, but we encourage people to go to our website.
Which is what?
Which would be www.nsks.org. So again, that's N for Nashua, S for soup, K for kitchen, S for shelter.org. You can also call 889-7770, and you could ask for Carol Weeks. She's our Director of Resource Development, including volunteers. She'd be happy to help you in a variety of different ways. One of the things I forgot to mention in terms of the shelter, so we'll provide a place for people to stay.
For how long?
For single adults, it's usually the average length of stay is about a month. For families, again, it takes them a little bit longer. The average stay is about 2 months.
And in that time, you're helping to make that transitional movement for them?
We're trying to help them identify what were the reasons why they lost their housing. What are the resources they need to find housing, and then where can they go to look for a place to stay, either with other people or on their own. Sometimes that's knowing that there's a couple of landlords that say, I know that if you're coming from the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter, they're not just going to refer anybody to me. And so we try to find people who say, I might charge a little bit less in rent because I'm trying to help folks that maybe need a hand. And so we're looking for those relationships. Sometimes we'll see that with somebody like an auto repair shop says, we are willing to help fix somebody's car if that's what the issue is. And sometimes that's somebody who says, I'm willing to give somebody a chance when they lost employment. Maybe there was some reason why they lost employment, but I'm willing to give them that second chance. And so Donna Marceau, who is our employment specialist, she will work with folks to say, okay, let's work on a resume. Let's find some job applications you can do. Let's get in the habit of applying to 3, 4, or 5 jobs a week at the very least. Because, the one reason why people say they never were offered a job is they never asked for the job. So we can at least take care of asking for the job.
And you also have a place within your organization that can help them with clothes to go on interviews.
We do have interview clothes. We try to have, there's other organizations that are really wonderful in town, Salvation Army, Goodwill, that specialize in being a clothing store, so we don't try to do that.
Right.
But if somebody has interview clothing, we by all means encourage them to bring it in, and we try to give it away as quickly as possible. Footwear
Yes.
is another big one.
Yes.
If somebody's getting a job in construction, they need steel-toed shoes
Right.
to make sure that their feet are okay.
Protected.
They're protected, and so if somebody wants to donate appropriate footwear, that is also a wonderful thing to do.
What are the types of donations that really help you do what you do?
Well, we take donations of again, work clothing, as we just mentioned, but the big one is food. And when somebody says, well, what kind of food do you need? I tend to have a one-word answer, which is fresh. The food that you tend to find in food pantries is food that has a very long shelf life. So if you think about a grocery store, you have what's in the middle of the grocery store, and then you have the food that's on the outside edges of the grocery store.
Right.
The food you find in the food pantry tends to be the food in the middle.
Right.
But if you look at what people actually purchase in a grocery store, 50% of what people purchase is on that outside. And fresh food is also the food that tends to go quickly, and we need it to go quickly. So if you were a member of a service organization or a church, community of faith, you might want to think about, could we do a fresh produce drive for the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter?
Now, what about the community gardens? How are you collaborating with them in order to provide you with the food that you need?
That is a great example. So when we moved to our new location over at 2 Quincy Street, one of the things we brought there was the idea that, hey, we don't want to just be in the business of giving out food. We also want to grow food.
Right.
And so we developed 6 community gardens right outside 2 Quincy. And then last year, we were walking by right behind Citizens Bank, right across from the post office. There's a big grassy space.
Right.
And I was thinking, grass is great for raising cows, but last I knew there weren't a whole lot of cows in Nashua. I wonder if we could grow vegetables there.
Yeah.
And so we talked to Citizens Bank, and Citizens Bank said, well, we don't know what we're going to be doing with that long term, but we'll be willing to rent you that space for $1 a month until we need to use it.
Wonderful.
And so we are currently renters of the space. And with various community partners, Grow Nashua is the biggest one.
Yes.
But also Church of the Good Shepherd, Southern New Hampshire Health, I think the Front Door Agency, Resilience Nashua, all came together to say, how can we sponsor beds the United Way? How can we sponsor a bed to grow food right here in the middle of downtown Nashua,
Right.
where you have tomatoes and peppers and corn and green beans all growing? Sometimes the food is grown to support a particular family. Sometimes it's grown to support a specific agency. Sometimes it's food that's brought back over to 2 Quincy Street, and we give it out when our pantry is open.
Wonderful. So it's working out very successfully for you.
It is.
So you have a total of 6 gardens, community gardens, did I
So
hear
we have
that
6
correctly?
gardens at 2 Quincy Street, and now we have, I believe, 18 gardens over on Spring Street.
Do you? That's fantastic.
It is.
It
It is.
really is fantastic. So fresh produce, though, in the growing season here, that is a shorter window for you. So the help of fresh produce is really needed in the other months of the year.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that I think people might want to consider is that taking care of our neighbors is also taking care of ourselves.
Right.
And to think about how could your group of volunteers, your church, your synagogue, your mosque, your workplace, think about all the different things associated with food. So it might be, how can we increase the amount of food that we're growing? And so if you commit to have a garden and I commit to have a garden, then we can increase the number of gardens in our community. If you and I commit to give some of our produce to the pantry, that's another thing we can do. And then we can also make a commitment to ourselves to eat more fresh produce. So just as we're taking care of other folks in the community who are hungry, we're also feeding our bodies and making our bodies healthier.
Which is exactly what you want to do. You want to have a well-living community working together with great health and well-being. So are you teaching the participants of people who attend for the meals and the shelters how to grow food, how to garden?
Exactly. So we will have people at the pantry, people at the shelters learning how to grow food. And actually that reminds me of our next project that we're going to be working on over the next 2 years, right next to the community gardens on Spring Street. It's an old elementary school. Some folks watching this might remember it as Sacred Heart Elementary. Some folks may have even attended Sacred Heart Elementary, but it hasn't been used as an elementary school for 40 years.
So it's just sitting there?
So it has been just sitting there for about 40 years. And just a little while ago, we signed a lease with the Catholic Diocese of Manchester to have that building, to rent that building for no cost for the next 40 years. Now, that seems like a deal, except for
the renovations.
We need to cover the renovations. And so we're going to be working on raising funding to renovate that building, to have it serve as the new shelter for single men on one floor, single women on another floor, for families on a third floor, to provide some long-term housing, hopefully, for individuals in the shelter who are not able to get out as quickly as we might like. And we're hoping that over the next couple of years, we're going to raise the funding. We're going to renovate the building, and we're going to be moving folks in probably by 2020, 2021. But then the best part is that they'll be staying in the building, and they'll be looking out the window, and they'll see the gardens grow. We might even be able to get some seeds going.
Absolutely.
In the building.
Absolutely.
And then in April, May, you don't want to do too quick because you don't want a frost to kill them.
Exactly.
Move them right out of the building and put them right into the garden.
Now, in their facilities that they'll be living in, will they have kitchens so that they can also learn how to cook?
Well, we will have kitchens and hopefully a food lab where people can learn about cooking, learn about, it's funny because you and I probably saw our moms doing this back 30, 40 years ago, but crock pots are a great way.
They're wonderful.
That you can get some food going.
Yes.
You can start it in the morning. You come home at 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and there you have a full meal. And it's a whole lot less expensive than going to McDonald's
and it's healthier.
And it's healthier than going to Kentucky Fried Chicken.
And that's an easy way to show people how they can eat healthy and easily, and that it's actually very easy to learn what to do. You just take a recipe and boom, 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 and it's done.
Absolutely.
That's terrific. So what is the most important information that you would like people to know about the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter?
The most important piece of information I would like people to know is that we are all human beings, and everybody who comes through the door, whether it's somebody who is needing a helping hand, somebody who wants to lend a hand, somebody who is there, they might even know why they're there. They just came in the door because somebody said, hey, you should go over there. Everybody comes in the door as a human being. Everybody deserves respect, and everybody needs the support, the love,
the caring
to live for another day.
Exactly. And what are you most proud of about the work that you do and the people that you serve?
I'm proud of this community. I've had the opportunity to live in various parts of our country. I lived in the Midwest. I lived in the Pacific Northwest. I lived down south. I grew up in New England, and I have to say, even though we think about New Englanders as being cold, kind of off-putting or something like that. Nowhere have I found the generosity, the willingness to get out and lend a hand. Some places people will say, well, if you're poor, it's probably your own fault. If you're poor, you probably did something to get there. I'm not saying that people don't feel that way in New England, but I'm saying it's much more likely that people will say, you know what, I was there too at one point in time. Yeah, I actually relate it to the fact that we do grow up in an environment where there's a fair amount of snow. I grew up about 30 miles south and west of Mount Monadnock. And I have to tell you, as a teenager, there was once or twice when I was probably driving a little bit too fast on roads that had a little bit too much snow, and I ended up in a snowbank.
Oh, no.
And I have to tell you that it wouldn't be more than 15, 20 minutes before somebody would come by and say, hey, do you need a hand? And I'd be out of there, and I'd be on my way to school, or I'd be on my way home, or wherever it was. I think that when you grow up in an environment where people say, yeah, you got to take care of each other, that ethos, that sense of community, then just flows through all the different aspects of our life.
And that is, I think, without a doubt, that is here, as far as what you're saying. And the Nashua community, I think, really embraces what you've just said. And when you spoke about the different collaborations that you have and people working together and saying, we can do this. There's no reason for people to be hungry. There's
That's
no
right.
people not to have shelter, a reason for them not to have shelter and a place to live, and that we care about each other and we want to make sure that everybody's healthy, happy, and well. And if they need a job, to help them get the resources for that job. So people can learn about your organization by going to your website.
Again, go to nsks.org. Give us a call, 889-7770, or quite honestly, just stop by during the day. We're always happy. It may be me, it may be somebody who just started work yesterday, but they'll give you a tour. You can see where all the magic happens. It may be food, it may be shelter, but really it's love. It's about people taking care of each other.
Which is wonderful. We really appreciate everything that you do. And we thank the Nashua community for
Absolutely.
embracing what you do and supporting you in every way. And we'd want to say to our audience, don't ever hesitate to jump in and help, to give a call, to think about the produce, to think about ways in which you can support your community members, because we really are one big family. We really are. And when we look upon it that way, it changes our whole perspective on life, doesn't it?
We're stronger together.
We truly are. We're stronger together. Thank you so much for
Thanks for being
everything
here.
that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Until next time.